Hello, dear friends. Welcome to this program, Our Moments with God, where I share with you my simple and humble reflections with the hope that this will help you and me in our spiritual journey and in finding a relationship with God. And in the last 3 days, I did not request you to subscribe to the channel, and therefore I found no new subscribers. Strange. So maybe you have to look into that as well, and please share the video with others. Thank you. Today, the church celebrates a very important feast of an important saint. Important feast, not but a feast of an important saint, Saint Augustine of Hippo. And that's why I have come out, and as you can see today, my camera is focusing very wide. As you can see, it is showing very long distance, place in the long distance. Why? Because Augustine, though born in Africa, in Algiers at that time, he traveled, he left his land and went through the forests and hills, went to another country, that time Italy. Of course, Algiers at that time was under the Roman Empire, so it was part of the empire, but still, he left Africa, crossed the Mediterranean Sea, and went to Rome, and also then further went to Milan, where he actually met St. Ambrose and had his experience of conversion. But St. Augustine's life is a very interesting, very rich, very, in a way, paradoxical, controversial life, one can say, but a very interesting and rich life. He is one of the greatest intellectuals of the early church. He was born in the 4th century in 350 or 54 and died in 430. So these were still about 16 centuries ago, but his influence remains in the church even today. He is the doctor of the church in the doctrinal sense, and his life story is very interesting. Yesterday we celebrated the feast of Saint Monica, who was his mother, and yesterday we mentioned that she prayed with tears in her eyes all the time, incessantly, for the conversion of Saint Augustine. Though Augustine also had one brother and one sister, of course she prayed also for her husband, who was not a Christian, as well as his mother-in-law, and her husband, that is Augustine's father, got baptized on the deathbed. Augustine himself was living, of course, he was a great intellectual, so he was sent to a very good school and highly paid school, and he got very good education. He was interested at that time. What was very popular was rhetoric. Rhetoric was the art of speaking in such forceful manner with great logic and reasoning that you could convince your hearers about what you were saying and maybe change their mind to your opinion. That is what he studied, and he studied that in Carthage, went back to his place in Tagaste, got there a job, but then came back to Carthage. But he was not quite satisfied, and he wanted to start a school of rhetoric, because he thought that is a big area for people to make use of. But he wanted to found that school of rhetoric in Rome. So that took him to Rome, where he found a job and he started working there. But then soon he got another offer in another famous city, which is also now famous, Milan, which is in the north of Rome. And he went to Rome, to Milan, and found a very good job of teaching there. And because he was an intellectual, he was always looking for new ideas. He was not quite satisfied with what he was reading, and he was always in search of God. In between, he actually had joined one movement called the Manichaeism, which he, after following for 10 years, left it because he was not satisfied. He was not finding the answers there, and in his search for the answers, he met Saint Ambrose in Milan, who was then the Bishop of Milan, and there he started discussing with Bishop Ambrose, and he came to know about the truth of the Catholic faith or Christianity at that time, because that time there was no other Protestant or other churches. There was only one Holy Catholic Apostolic Church. And he then got baptized by Ambrose. But much before his baptism, he had also a very checkered life. He was quite, in a way, conspicuous, and he had woman, and he had a son from her. He had not married her. She was just his partner. So he was suffering from this lust and concupiscence and other things, and did not bother too much about ethics and things like that. But after his conversion, then he remained completely celibate, and when he came back to Hippo, he decided to become a priest. Though in his book Confessions, which is one of his very famous book and a classic actually, he writes there that he did not want to become a priest, but he eventually became a priest. And 4 years after his ordination in 396, then he became the bishop of Hippo, which he remained till he died in 430. He wrote books after books after books, because he was delving with philosophy, Greek philosophy. He was mainly interested in Plato, and he found that a lot of Catholic doctrine could be associated with what Plato wrote, but give it its own twist. And therefore, what he wrote and the doctrines that he wrote became very famous, not only at that time, but continued to be very famous. Of course, he later on became so spiritual, and I will not make this video very long. I just want to end this video by those two things he said. And he said, "O Lord, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee." And another thing, when he really discovered the beauty of God, then he said, "O beauty so ancient and yet so new, so late have I known thee." I am sure in our attempt in our spiritual life, we too will find this beauty which is so ancient and yet so new. Thank you.